Shabbat Shalom to all of you out there in social media world. This is Brother Dana coming to you from Chicago. Thank you for joining me for one of my off-the-cuff videos. Today I wanted to share a little bit about what does humility, true humility, look like in the face of racism. True humility in the heart of a fellow Caucasian family member of mine. What does it look like when they're faced with racism and white privilege and white supremacy? And this was stirred up in me to bring this out after I received an email yesterday from one of my fellow Caucasian brothers who actually has the heart now for you gentile brothers and sisters. His eyes and heart has been opened to the revelation of who you really are. But before I go into that, I got a couple volumes on Amazon called Black History Flashcards, because it is also my goal in my videos to share the beauty of our Black history, which has never really been taught in this country. So this morning I wanted to share a little bit about a young lady. Her name was Claudette Colvin. She was born on September 5th of 1939, and as this card says, she is still with us to this day. Who is this young lady by the name of Claudette Colvin? Well, she is a pioneer of the civil rights movement. It also says that 9 months before Rosa Parks, which this was now on March 2nd of 1955, this young lady at the age of 15 refused to move from her seat on a Montgomery-bound segregated bus. She said that she had paid her fare and felt it was her constitutional right to remain in her seat. However, she was dragged off the bus, handcuffed, and taken to an adult jail. Now, she was 15 years old and she was pregnant. So due to this illegitimate pregnancy, as well as her darker toned skin, Colvin is not a much celebrated figure when it comes to the African American civil rights movement. But when you look more into this young lady's life, on February 1st of 1956, Miss Claudette served as the star witness alongside 4 other plaintiffs in the Browder versus Gale case. And this was a landmark federal case chaired by a 3-judge panel, which ended the history of segregation on public transportation in Alabama and many states across America. So that is the beauty of the history of this young lady by the name of Claudette Colvin. So what does humility look like in the face of racism? Dealing with my Caucasian family members. Well, I'm a restorative practices coach for a school system, and my main job is to go around into these schools, with the majority of them are in our inner city communities of mostly colored skinned individuals. And I go in, number one, to teach teachers how to implement restorative practices within their classroom, as well then with the administration across the entire school. Restorative practices is the idea of, instead of just bringing punitive punishment to a perpetrator, we want the perpetrator to acknowledge in the face of his or her victim or victims, community of victims, what he or she did, in hopes that empathy will target or will be brought into the heart of that individual when they look at the damage that they have done to a person or to the people. For instance, I had a young man that stole a cell phone. And if we just punish this individual, as I say, we do not have relationship with a law. The only type of relationship we have with the law is, can we outsmart the law and get by with breaking it? But if I break the speed limit, I'm not going to come home and cry because I hurt the law's feelings. And in our society, that is what we have developed. Developed individuals that don't recognize that our behavior hurts people. And so restorative means to bring this individual and look at what they did outside of the law, but in how their actions hurt individuals within their community. So this young man said, well, all I did was, steal her cell phone. I'll give her cell phone back. I'll buy her a new one. Well, but in the middle of doing a peace circle, it wasn't about the cell phone that this young lady shared to this young man, but it was about the case that the cell phone was in. This case was given to her by a grandfather that she loved dearly. But since that time, he had passed away. So when the young man took the cell phone, yes, she was upset because that was her phone. But the damage to her heart was due to the fact that the case that she could not get back was given to her by her grandfather. And after this was shared, this individual broke down, and he realized that his behavior just didn't break a law, but it broke the heart of this young lady. And he identified with this young lady the pain of losing her grandfather and how special that case must have been when he in his own life had lost his grandfather several years ago. That is restorative. Now, we see it in action when it comes to dealing with white criminals. When a white young man walks into a school and blows away 12 people, we ask, what happened? Where did we fail this young man? Obviously we did, because he went in and shot all these people up. And then we realized that he was bullied and nobody stepped in to help him. But when it comes to our so-called young black men and women, or people of color in this country, there is no restorative attitude whatsoever within my Caucasian family members. And that is why I want to talk to you about, what does true humility look like in the face of racism, white supremacy, or white privilege. Most of my Caucasian family members that are trying to still hide their true racist heart will say, I'm not racist, I have a black friend, or I have a black family member, or I have adopted black kids, or I'm not racist, I support poor Africans over in Africa. But is that true humility? Well, the email that I got from my brother Daniel yesterday was just another example of what true humility looks like and feels like, coming from one of my fellow Caucasian family members that have embraced empathy when it comes to our so-called black brothers and sisters. Empathy means putting yourself in somebody else's shoes and trying to feel what it must feel like being in that person's shoes. And the main thing that I would like to always ask is, how many of our white society people, family members in this country, have ever stepped back for a moment and listened to you as people of color, the true chosen people of the Most High, to put themselves in your shoes? I know as a fact this nation has never done it, because if they have, we wouldn't be where we are today in the way that we treat or value you as so-called black brothers and sisters. So, humility in the face of racism. I have some scriptures that I want to bring out. 1 Corinthians 12:26 says, if one member suffers, all suffer together. That's empathy. So if Christianity, white Christianity, believed that, they would see that their fellow black brothers and sisters in the church are suffering. And therefore, they would take the attitude of humility to say, if they suffer, we will suffer with them. If they're hurting, we will hurt with them. And not say, well, I'm not racist. I have a black friend. They would suffer with you. But they will never do that because they never take the moment to have any type of empathy to even try to walk in your shoes. Micah 6:8. He has shown you, O mortal, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you? To act justly and to love mercy and to walk humbly with your God. One of my personal stories comes from just a couple weeks ago. In one of the schools that I am currently in, they asked me to work with 5 young men that have pretty much throughout the year been quote unquote troublemakers, making decisions that are not healthy for themselves or the community of the school. Now, this school happens to be majority Caucasian. But in this group of 5 young men, there was one young man that was black. And so when they were brought into the classroom, this young man, this young black man, even more than the other kids, they were all disrespectful, but this young man was very disrespectful. Another stupid white man, I don't have to effing listen to you, you effing honky, who do you think you are? And as he continued to call me names, he took out his phone and he began to take pictures and say, you ugly, look at you and your big old forehead, and on and on. And he's like, I know I'm making you mad. And I continued to sit and say, no, young man, you're not making me mad. I'm not upset with you. And that would just stir him more and more. You effing this and you mother effing this, and look at your shoes and you this, and still getting up and walking around and walking behind me, calling me names. And I sat there and I listened to the things that he was sharing. That took about 20 minutes. And by that time, lunch was over. And I said, well, I will see you all tomorrow. You ain't effing going to see me, you blankety blank, 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 on and on. I'm going to get my mom up here. You an effing this, and F you, you white honky, and on and on. Well, that night I went home, and Punitive would right away just say, I'm going to go talk to this principal. This young man needs some more consequences. But humility and empathy says different. I heard what this young man said. First of all, he says, I don't know you. Why should I trust you? I don't trust you, and I'm not going to respect you because I don't know you. Why should I respect you? Pride says, I'm an adult. I am a teacher. You will listen. White supremacy says, I'm an adult, I am a teacher, and in my mindset, I'm white. You better listen and respect who I am. But humility in the face of racism or white supremacy or prejudice takes a step back to listen and to feel. This young man made several great points. I don't know you. Why should I respect you? Why should I trust you? Which means, why should I listen to you? All of these things I felt coming out of a place of hurt. So that Thursday night, I came home and I dwelt on this young man and the questions and the things that he threw at me. And I decided to put together a few things to go back to him this next day, to meet with him, and to acknowledge, number one, that I heard his feelings. And that is exactly what I did. And I sat down with him and I said, young man, I said, give me just a moment, if you will, because I heard you yesterday. And I want a moment, if you would grant me that, to share with you and try to answer some of the questions that you brought forth. And so I began to talk to him, and I said, you know, I know you don't know me, and I'm glad you don't fully trust me, because why should you? And so I shared with him some pictures and some stories of some of the young black men that I have worked with over these past 25 years. I then shared with him my journey in the inner city and going into the correctional facilities and working with some of the young men there. I then acknowledged that respecting somebody doesn't mean that you trust them. I said there's no way I would ask you to trust police officers. But young man, I want you to know that at times we have to respect individuals, not because they deserve it, not because they've earned it, but simply because they may wear a uniform or a badge or sit in a seat that our society says they have power over you and I. Even though in most cases, I said, young man, they use that power in a wrong way simply because you are a young black man. By this time, I had his full attention. And by the time our lunch period was over with, this young man shared several stories where he has been racially profiled, picked on because of his black skin, judged, demeaned, and how that has hurt him and made him angry. But at that moment, empathy stepped in. Humility in the face of racism stepped in. And by the grace of the Most High Yah, him and I reconciled. Where when he got up, he shook my hand, he apologized. And from that moment on, this young man has come to these lunch meetings and he has shared. And he said, you know what, Mr. Stevens, thank you. You know, I think you're really trying to encourage us. And even though we can stop doing this because my behavior's starting to change, can we still get together weekly? Because I like this time where we can share and talk. And it helps me get some of the hurt off my heart. Humility in the face of racism should look like empathy. And to my Hebrew brothers and sisters, to those of you out there that are of a darker colored skin, I want you to know that if my Caucasian family member is truly humbled and not racist, they will have an empathetic attitude towards you in listening to what you have to say and then do their best to try to put themselves in your shoes. Now, all of this was stirred up from an email that I got from my brother Daniel. And I want to read his email, and I want you to see the humility of this young man. Brother Dana, I hope all is well. I watched your latest videos, one pertaining to Notre Dame in Paris. Last week I had a dream in which a voice told me to read Baruch of the Apocrypha again. I had read it before, but nothing really stuck out. And judging by how things have been since I have been exposed to the truth, I decided to obey. And I read through it. And a verse jumped out at me. Chapter 6, verse 38. Their gods of wood and of stone and of gold and of silver are like the stones that are hewn out of the mountains, and they that worship them shall be confounded. I had read this a couple days before the fire at the cathedral. I saw the news on Tuesday, and the old me would have been crushed, being an architect student and having visited there last year. But that verse crossed my mind, and it's true. People revere that stone structure as an idol, and just as it is written, it has been confounded. I spoke about this to my Hebrew Israelite friends at work, and they agreed. A few weeks ago, I was actually invited to attend a Passover gathering that their group is having tonight. What an honor! an outsider Gentile, being welcomed into a sacred space for Yah's true people. I wanted to go just to listen and learn, just as I have been learning. But however, I was concerned my presence would create animosity or ill feelings. They reassured me it would not be an issue. But by end of day, I was told not to attend. I completely understood, though it did hurt a little. That disappointing pain, though, is nothing, considering what their people have been put through all these centuries of persecution. I was just hoping to be a part of something that is set apart. I am hoping the future holds more tolerance for our presence among Yah's precious chosen people. Please keep up the videos. They're a great source of hope in a virtual gathering for all of us. Hope to hear from you soon. Daniel. What does humility look like in the face of racism from the hearts of my Gentile family members? Exactly this. Exactly this. It did hurt a little, but I completely understood. That disappointing pain is nothing, considering what their people, what they have been put through all of these centuries. The persecution, the injustice. Philippians 2 says, therefore, if there is any encouragement in Yahshuah, any comfort in love, any sharing in the Spirit, any sympathy, complete my joy by thinking the same way, having the same love, being united and agreeing with each other. Don't do anything for selfish purposes, but with humility think of others as better than yourselves. Instead of each person watching out for their own good, watch out for what is better for others. You hurt my feelings. And so therefore my feelings as a white individual is greater than the pain and the suffering of generations that you've gone through. Selfish. I'm not racist. I have a black friend. Selfish. Not humility. Adopt the attitude that was in Yahshua HaMashiach. Though he was in the form of God, Yahshua did not consider being equal with Yah or God something to exploit. But he emptied himself by taking the form of a slave and by becoming like human beings. The ultimate example of empathy. The ultimate example of walking in somebody else's shoes. When Yahshua found himself in the form of a human, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to the point of death, even death on a cross. And we know that death on a tree was one of the most humiliating ways of dying. Therefore, Yah highly honored him and gave him a name above all names, so that at the name of Yahshua, everyone in heaven, on earth, and under the earth might bow down, and every tongue shall confess that Yahshua HaMashiach is Lord, to the glory of Yah the Father. So what does humility look like in the face of racism from my Caucasian Gentile family members? Exactly that. Empathy, walking in your shoes, identifying with you, listening to you, and not allowing our feelings of white supremacy or white privilege to raise up when we might get a little hurt. But putting our own little feelings aside to recognize the damage that has been done. When I work with the young people, I always share this example that our lives when we're born is kind of like a clean piece of paper. But as we go through life, when we are bullied or racism or our parents abuse us or things that happen that damage us, it begins to crumple us and leave us like this. And when nobody acknowledges what's happened, in most cases we operate out of that hurt and pain and anger. But when we show humility and empathy and acknowledging what people have gone through, just like that young man, my hopes was to, in that short period of time, give him an avenue to share his feelings, knowing that I'm listening because I care. And it's not about how my feelings were hurt the day before when you were calling me all kinds of nasty names, but to recognize that those nasty names were coming from a place of hurt where nobody before was willing to acknowledge this young black man's feelings, but to only punish him for calling out and behaving in a negative way. I know that that day might have brought some relief, but I also know that that young man will walk and live the rest of his life until he comes into the healing power of the Most High Yah with wrinkles. But I pray that those wrinkles will not any longer control him. So what does humility look like in the face of racism and white supremacy? It looks like, hopefully, what you can see in me and what I just read concerning our Caucasian brother Daniel. That we take a step back and we listen and we show empathy and love and concern, and we push past our own feelings to look at your hurt and to do whatever we can do to acknowledge it and to restore you into a place of beauty, because again, you are the true chosen people of the Most High. You are kings and queens. Even though us Caucasians have tried to take that and have taken that away, you are kings and queens, and you are beautiful. Until we meet again, this is Brother Dana coming to you from Chicago. This is Off the Cuff, and I am part of the One Love movement, a nation strong, serving the Most High Yah, unstoppable and unbeatable. Until we talk again, shalom.